We've been talking about how dominant the Puritans were in the establishment of New England in the early part of American history. But Puritanism quickly declined within about 100 years of their settlement, 1630. By 1730, the Puritan project was in serious decline, and we want to discuss at this time what caused that. Why did Puritanism fade away? Well, the first reason is that the first Puritans that came over, they suffered a lot of hardships. They had been oppressed in England. They had to worry about civil war. They had to come across an ocean on boats that were very hazardous and dangerous. But their children experienced none of these hardships. Their children lived in a town where mom and dad were successful and influential, and they didn't really have those hardships. The newer immigrants that came in among them were not all of the same ilk. They didn't all subscribe to the Puritan project. So there was heterogeneity among the new immigrants. The children viewed their parents' religion as a good bit rigid. For example, in order to join the church, you had to go before the elders of the church, and you were basically put on trial to prove that you were a Christian, that you were worthy of being a church member. And they actually had a format called the morphology of conversion, where they determined whether or not you were truly converted or whether your story might just be fake. That was too difficult. A lot of kids just said, I'd rather not even try to become a church member than have to go through that. So about 1660, they started to notice that, wow, we've got a lot of Puritans here who aren't even church members. So they allowed them actually to join the church in what they called the halfway covenant, which would allow them to have their own children baptized, even though they themselves weren't church members. We talked about the interaction with the Indians, particularly King Philip's War, that came about as a result of Johnny Sassamon's conversion and King Philip's hatred of the culture being undermined by these Puritans. And King Philip's War was seen by the Puritans as a sign from God, or perhaps the devil, that they were in terrible trouble, that their project had pretty much failed. There was a book called The Captivity Narrative of Mary Rowlandson, where she was taken captive by the Indians during King Philip's War, and she told the horrors of what the Indians were like, and that scared a lot of Puritans, a lot of European settlers, as to, wow, we came into this land where Satan is supreme, and now we're paying for it. The number of casualties in King Philip's War was larger, the percentage was larger than any other American war in the future. About 33% of the population was killed in that war. In 1688, the King of England, James II, totally revoked Massachusetts' charter. He didn't want the Puritans to have any control over Boston anymore. So he sent a royal governor, a member of the Church of England, Edward Randolph, and then later Edmund Andros, to come over and govern the Puritans, and you could be sure that they didn't like that. As a matter of fact, James II did away with all the different colonies. Instead of having Massachusetts and Connecticut and Rhode Island and Long Island and New York, that sort of thing, he just said, no more of that. You're all one colony. We're calling you the Dominion of New England. Increase Mather, the head of Harvard College, attempted to negotiate this, but unsuccessfully. There was a changing political environment in England. You may know that James II had been thrown off of the throne by William and Mary in the Glorious Revolution of 1688. And that required, as a result of the changes in England, required New England to become more tolerant of the dissenters. And you could see it. You look at the names. Look at the names of the children of the early Puritans. Look at the names of the children of the later Puritans, and they're no longer your Hezekiahs and Nehemiahs, but now your Williams and your Roberts, your Charleses. They're far more secular, mainstream English names. Now, as a result of the Glorious Revolution, you also see some names of cities and institutions changing to reflect appreciation for the new king, King William and his wife Mary. Williamsburg is founded in Virginia, which will become the colonial colony. In that same city, they'll establish the second college in America called William and Mary College, the first being Harvard. And then Princeton, named for William of Nassau. The main hall at Princeton is called Nassau Hall, where William originated in England, actually in Holland. Now, the Puritan response to the Glorious Revolution was one of grief. The fact that, wow, we are disappointing John Winthrop and our forefathers, those who had this great idea. We're just not living up to the model of Christian charity. We're not a city on a hill. We have disappointed God. We have failed in this Puritan project. So there's tremendous amount of anger among some of the Puritans. They start to call, some of them start to preach these strong hellfire and damnation sermons, trying to call the Puritans back to their original project, to their original blueprint. And there's a name for that kind of a sermon. It's called the Jeremiad, named for the prophet Jeremiah, who was always saying to the people, turn, repent, and go back. But the main event that kind of signified the end of the rigid Puritan rule were the Salem witchcraft trials that took place in 1692. And this was the Puritans' way of saying, we are going to get back this land from Satan. We're going to drive Satan and all of his demons out of New England. And that didn't quite work so well, and we're going to come to that pretty soon.